We've all heard it a million times. Flying is, statistically, the absolute safest way to travel. And look, for the most part, that is 100% true. It's a total marvel of modern engineering. But what about the exceptions? What about the places where the normal rules of aviation just kind of get thrown out the window? Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's really think about that for a second. Because while the answer is generally yes, today we're going to be exploring the absolute razor's edge of aviation. We're talking about the airports that seriously challenge that assumption, forcing pilots and their planes to perform some incredible feats just to get on the ground in one piece.
These are what you might call extreme airports, and we're not kidding. These are places where geography, crazy weather, and sometimes just plain bizarre design all team up to create some of the most demanding and dangerous conditions you can possibly imagine. Landing here isn't just a routine procedure, it's a massive test of nerve, skill, and technology.
Okay, so our first stop on this tour is all about the environment. Some airports, it seems, were just built in the wrong place, completely hemmed in by nature itself. We're talking about massive, towering mountains and brutally high altitudes. Now, this is the single biggest risk you'll find in mountainous regions, and it's got a pretty chilling technical name: Controlled Flight into Terrain, or CFIT. What that means is a perfectly good, fully functioning airplane is flown directly into a mountain, usually because the pilot has lost track of where they are. It is the number one thing these airports are designed to avoid. And here are three prime examples. You've got Paro in Bhutan, which is just nestled deep in the Himalayas. Then there's Lukla, the famous gateway to Mount Everest, and Toncontín, which is squeezed into this tight little valley in the capital of Honduras. For every single one of them, the main threat is just the solid ground all around them. And this chart really shows you one of the huge problems. The higher up you go, the thinner the air gets. For an airplane, that is really bad news. It means less lift from the wings and less oxygen for the engines to actually generate power. So everything the plane needs to do, climb, speed up, even just stay in the air, becomes so much harder. This description of the approach into Toncontín, well, it paints a really vivid picture, doesn't it? Pilots can't just fly a straight line in, no way. They have to do this precise, winding dance through the mountains, making these super sharp, last-minute turns just to get a shot at the runway. There is absolutely zero room for error. All right, so it's not just the mountains around the airport that are dangerous. Sometimes the biggest challenge is the runway itself. I'm talking about strips of asphalt that are way too short, way too steep, or, well, just plain weird. Just look at this. The difference in scale is insane. A typical runway at a big international airport is over 3,000 meters long. But at Courchevel Altiport in the French Alps, pilots get a measly 537 meters. That is less than a sixth of the space to land and come to a complete stop. And believe it or not, it gets even crazier. That incredibly short runway is also built on the side of a mountain. It's got an 18.6% upward gradient. That's not a runway, it's basically a ski slope with some pavement on it. Now, that steep incline helps planes slow down when they land, but it makes taking off, well, it's an absolute nail-biter. And then you have Lukla. It's like it combines all the worst features into one terrifying package. The runway is even shorter than Courchevel's, just 450 meters. It slopes up at 12%. If you overshoot your landing, you smash into a solid mountain wall. If you don't get enough speed on takeoff, you drop right off a 600-meter cliff. So the most critical point is this: there are no second chances. A go-around just isn't an option. You have to get it right the first time. Madeira Airport in Portugal has a totally different kind of challenge. See, they desperately needed a longer runway, but they were stuck on this tiny little island. So what was the solution? This incredible feat of engineering, a runway extension built on 180 giant columns right over the sea. But this unique design forces pilots to make this sharp, swooping turn towards the mountains before banking hard at the very last second to line up with the runway. It's wild. So, we've covered mountains and we've covered runways, but some of the biggest dangers out there are completely invisible. Now we're talking about the raw, unpredictable power of weather, especially wind. So, the deadliest weather phenomenon for a plane on approach is something called wind shear. I want you to imagine you're flying through perfectly calm air one second, and the next, you hit an invisible wall of wind, or maybe the air just drops out from under your wings. It can cause a catastrophic loss of lift right when a pilot needs it the most, during landing. And what's incredible is that this isn't some new discovery. When Charles Darwin visited the super remote island of St. Helena way back in 1836, he perfectly described wind shear. He wrote about this invisible barrier where calm air met a powerful blast, all created by wind flowing over the island's cliffs. Okay, now fast forward almost 200 years. The British government spends over £285 million building a brand new airport on St. Helena to connect it to the rest of the world. But only after it was built did test flights discover, you guessed it, dangerous, unforeseen wind shear, exactly what Darwin described, made the airport totally unusable for the commercial flights it was built for. The fallout from this was just immense. A UK Parliament report called the entire project an unquestionable failure. It's just a mind-boggling example of how ignoring the power of the elements, even when the warnings are centuries old, can lead to a colossal and very expensive mistake. So you're faced with treacherous mountains, impossible runways, and violent weather. How on earth do planes land at these places at all? Well, the answer really comes down to one thing: the incredible skill of a very small, very elite group of pilots. Just take the approach into Paro, Bhutan. It is widely considered the most challenging landing in the entire world. There's no radar to help. Pilots have to fly completely manually, navigating just by sight. They literally weave between 18,000-foot peaks, using specific houses on the ground as checkpoints before making a blind 45-degree turn to find a runway they can only see moments before they have to land on it. And this isn't something you just learn in basic flight school. Only a tiny, tiny handful of pilots in the entire world have this special certification that's required to even attempt this landing. It is a level of skill that's honestly more like artistry. So how do they do it? Well, modern cockpits have incredible tools for what's called terrain awareness, showing pilots exactly where the mountains are on a screen. But that technology is only one part of the solution. The real key is the pilot's discipline, constantly cross-checking and following procedures to the letter. It's that mix of human skill and technology that separates a safe landing from a sea fight disaster. But even with the best pilots and the strictest rules, the stakes remain terrifyingly high. This timeline of incidents at Lukla Airport is just a sobering reminder of what happens when those tiny margins for error finally disappear. These aren't just statistics. They represent the real, tragic cost of flying on the edge. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? These airports connect remote communities. They allow us to reach the unreachable parts of our world. They really are monuments to our own ambition. But in pushing those limits, are we just taking a gamble with gravity and with fate that sooner or later we're bound to lose?